Shell environment variables. What are they? How do you use them in the shell? And what information do they carry? How are they passed from the shell to a program? And how does your program access them? The shell has variables like conventional programming languages. To give a variable a value, we use an assignment statement like this. To retrieve the value of a variable, you put a $sign in front of the variable name. Shell variables can only hold strings of characters, but this still makes them really useful. For example, a variable could hold a file name. The way this works is that the shell replaces the $variable name by the string it contains. In this example, $file is replaced by the string Fred. The shell program scans your command line, and when it finds a word preceded by the $sign, it looks for the value of a variable with that name. If it finds a value, it replaces the variable with the value. If it doesn't find a variable by that name, it replaces the variable with an empty string. You can find out what environment variables your shell is currently maintaining using the env or env command. I've edited the output here because the real list is actually fairly long, but you should try it on your own system and you'll find that there are lots of variables being maintained by the shell. Whenever you run a program, these variables and their values are passed to the process in a similar way to program arguments, but more on that later. You might be wondering what all these variables are for, so let's go through them. The first one there, term equals xterm-256 color, this tells your process what type of character terminal you're using. Different types of character terminal respond to different character sequences to set up things like colored text or position on the screen and so on. The next one, shell equals /bin/bash, this is the shell program that you're currently running. SSH_TTY equals /dev/pts/0, this is the device your session is coming from. So in this case, you're using a network connection, and what we call this a pseudo terminal. The next one, user equals Bob, this is the username of the user that's running the program. Then we have a really important one, the path variable. Now, this variable contains a list of directories that are searched when you type a command to the shell. If the command you type is found as a file in one of these directories, the file is executed. You can see that the directory names are separated by colon characters. The next one, pwd equals /home/bob, this is the current directory that the shell is in. pwd stands for print working directory. The next one, lang equals en_us.utf-8, this is the name of the character set and the encoding currently being used. In this case, it's US English, encoded according to the UTF-8 protocol. In an earlier video on character representations, I talked about the UTF-8 protocol. The next one, TZ equals Australia/Sydney, this is the time zone of your location. I happen to be located in Sydney, Australia. Then home equals /home/Bob, this is the home directory of the current user, and logname equals Bob is the name of the currently logged in user. Now, when the shell starts a program, it passes some of these environment variables to the new program. And you can add a variable to the list of variables that are going to be passed to a program using the export command like this. If you don't export the variable, it'll still be available for use in shell scripts, but it won't be passed to any program started by your shell. Let's see how we access environment variables from within a Python program. Python has a module called OS that includes system data and many system call functions. This is where you can find things like the fork and the exec functions, file management functions including the pipe, signal functions, and so on. It's also where you can access the shell environment variables. In a special variable called os.environ, this is a Python dictionary that contains all the environment variables and their values. This code shows how we use os.environ to get the value of the $user environment variable. Now you might ask, where are these environment variables stored? Well, here we have to get a bit more technical because all of the action's actually happening at fairly low level. And I'll describe it using the C programming language, but I think you will find it easy to follow. A process is started within a child process with the exec system call. Using the C language, the declaration looks like this. This is for the exec.ve variant of exec. The child process is replaced by the new program, and that program is started with a call on the main function. In the C language, the new program's main function has the following arguments. First, an integer, then an array of pointers to strings, and then a pointer to a string. Now, the first one, argc, is the number of arguments that are being passed to your program. Then the array of pointers to strings is an array of pointers to the argument strings. And the last one, env here, is a pointer to a sequence of pointers terminated by a null pointer, a zero pointer, to the environment strings. And the environment strings are simply name equals and the value. Now, each of these arguments, argc, argv, and env, are stored on the stack. And the argument strings are also stored on the stack when the program starts. The environment strings are a little different. They're stored in another memory area above the stack, as you can see in this diagram. Now, just as an aside, strings in a Unix system are null terminated. That means that the end of the string is marked by a byte containing all 0 bits. That's what we mean by a null character. If we know where a string is stored in memory, the beginning of it, then, in other words, the address of the first character, we can find the end of the string by scanning for the null byte. Note that some characters might be multiple bytes. For example, if you have an emoji character in Unicode, it's going to be more than 1 byte long. However, they're still terminated with a 0. Now, the term pointer that I've used a few times comes from the C programming language, and it's simply a variable that holds a memory address, telling you where to find the first character in a string, for example. The C language is compiled into machine code, translated, in other words, from the high-level C code into the low-level instructions for the computer that can be directly executed by the CPU, and it then accesses memory directly. On the other hand, the Python language is translated into a virtual machine code, sort of a made-up code, that's then interpreted by the Python runtime program. Now, it can also access the arguments and environment variables, but in a slightly different way. When a program is started, a Python program, the argument strings are made available in a list stored in the sys module. So, for example, if we look at this, this program is printing out the first argument of your script. You can find out how many arguments there are by looking at the length of argv with the len function. So len of sys.argv will tell you how long that list is, but that also is the number of arguments to your program. And as I said before, the environment strings, that is the shell variables and their string values, are made available in a dictionary found in the OS module. That's the os.environ variable. So in this video I've described what environment variables are, how you use them, what information they carry, and how they are passed from the shell to a program and how the program accesses them.